This happened a few weeks ago. I was 35 and just starting as a paramedic at an old hospital. I had driven by it so many times, but I never thought I'd work there. The hospital had peeling walls and flickering fluorescent lights. It felt eerie right from the start. I hoped to make a difference in people's lives after losing a family member. Little did I know that my new job would plunge me into unsettling experiences I still can't explain. On my first shift, the emergency room was packed. I was trying to keep up with the pace. In the middle of it, I heard a strange, distorted sound coming from the supply room. It sounded almost like a whisper mixed with static. I thought about checking it out, but figured it was just faulty equipment. People needed me, so I kept my focus on my patients. Still, a chill ran through me. I brushed it off as my tired mind playing tricks. As weeks went on, things got weirder. One night I was up late and the negative pressure alarms blared in an empty room. My heart raced as I rushed to check on it. Nothing was there. The room felt cold, like someone had just been inside. I stood in silence looking around, wondering if I was hearing things. Was the hospital truly haunted, or was I just overreacting? Days later, I had the same unsettling feeling. I was sitting at the desk late when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. It felt like a presence was watching me, but I shook my head. I didn't want to believe it. Then came the bizarre incident with the patient paperwork. I was going through the desk and found some discharge papers missing. I searched everywhere. Days later, I stumbled upon them again, but they had names and details I didn't recognize. My skin crawled as I read through them. It felt wrong. Had someone played a prank on me? Or was there something more disturbing at play? Every time I thought about it, dread washed over me. The feeling of unease grew day by day. I kept hearing hushed conversations in vacant areas. Each time I would approach, only to find emptiness. I started questioning my own sanity. Was it just the atmosphere of the hospital? Or was it something sinister that had seeped into its walls? The final straw came one night in the break room. I looked out the window and saw a figure standing in the parking lot. It was just staring at me. My heart pounded in my chest. I blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving darkness behind. Panic gripped me. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but nothing eased my fear. What was happening in that hospital? I thought I could help people, but now I just felt like I was being watched. I stared down the hall, feeling a chill creep down my spine. There was something there, something I couldn't see. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The following night I was scheduled for another shift. I dreaded it, but knew I couldn't take time off without a good reason. I tried to clear my mind. Maybe if I focused on my patients, I could ignore the things that were bothering me. But by the time I arrived, the ominous atmosphere hit me the moment I stepped inside. The emergency room was less crowded than usual. Instead of patients, the silence felt heavier. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept glancing around, half expecting to see that figure again. I forced myself to focus on the task at hand. I had patients to care for. As I assisted with a few cases, I noticed a nurse leaning against a wall, looking uneasy. She would cast nervous glances toward the storage area where I had first heard those whispers. I approached her, hoping for a distraction. "Is everything all right?" I asked. She hesitated before answering. "It's just... things have been strange lately." I nodded, feeling a flicker of connection with her unease. "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped. "You ever hear voices when no one's around, or feel like someone's watching you?" My stomach twisted. "Yeah, I have." She glanced down the hall, lowering her voice even further. "Some say the hospital is haunted. Patients sometimes don't leave. Not really." Her words settled like a rock in my chest. I wanted to laugh it off, but the chill in her tone gave me pause. "Just stories, right? Urban legends." She shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Maybe, but when you're here late at night, it's hard to shake the feeling. I've had a few unusual experiences myself." Before I could ask more, a loud crash echoed from the storage area. Startled, we both turned to see the door swinging lightly. as if someone had just left. I drew in a breath and moved towards it, curiosity trailing in my wake. Inside, the shelves were stocked with supplies, but something caught my eye on the floor, a pile of papers scattered in disarray. I bent down to pick them up, and my heart sank. They were discharge papers. The same kind I had found before. I recognized one name, a patient who had passed away weeks ago. Of course I remembered him. I was part of the team that had tried to save him. I looked through the rest, panic crawling up my spine as I realized they were all filled with similar names associated with tragic outcomes. What the hell? I muttered to myself. Suddenly the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. I felt a rush of unease wash over me. It was as if the room were closing in. I scrambled to piece it all together. Why were these papers here? Why now? That's when I heard it. A soft whisper, clear as day, right behind me. I turned quickly, but again, nothing. Just the empty storage room. The hair on my neck stood straight. I had to leave. Now. I exited the room, shutting the door behind me, and bolted for the break room. My heart raced as I imagined what could be behind me. Every shadow felt like it held something lurking. I needed air. I was losing my grip. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and died, plunging me into an oppressive blackness. Panic bubbled in my throat as I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't going to be able to shake this place that easily. Something wanted to be heard. I had to find out what it was. I stumbled forward, trying to find my way in the pitch black. The silence felt suffocating. My hands brushed against the cold, sterile walls of the break room as I moved cautiously. I could still hear the faint whispers echoing in my mind. Get a grip, I told myself. I needed to focus. I reached for my phone, fumbling in my pocket to turn on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, but the light felt thin, barely pushing back the shadows that seemed to swirl around me. A sudden noise made me freeze. I pointed the light toward the sound and my breath caught. A figure loomed at the far end of the break room, barely illuminated by my phone's glow. It was just a silhouette, but something about it whispered danger. My stomach knotted as I strained to see. "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. No response. The figure didn't move but seemed to be watching me. I didn't know whether to run or stay. My instincts screamed at me to get out of there. Gathering every ounce of courage, I edged toward the door. Just then the lights flickered back on, flooding the room with blinding brightness. I blinked against it, heart pounding, and scanned the area. The figure was gone. What the hell is going on? I whispered to myself. Just as I was about to leave, something dropped from one of the cabinets above. A small glass jar rolled out and shattered at my feet, scattering broken glass everywhere. I jumped back, my heart racing. But something else caught my attention. Buried amidst the shards was a scrap of paper. I slowly crouched to pick it up, my hands trembling. The remnants of the paper were barely legible, but I could make out the word, "help." My chest tightened. Who had written this? I glanced around the break room, an overwhelming feeling of dread settling over me. I had to talk to that nurse again. I needed answers. I stepped over the glass cautiously, planning my next move. Exiting the break room, I retraced my steps, the cheerful ambiance of the hospital feeling completely out of place after what I witnessed. The hallways were eerily quiet now. I found myself in front of the nurse's station, but she was nowhere in sight. "Hey," I called out, hoping to catch anyone's attention. No luck. I felt a growing anxiety gnawing at me. It was like the walls themselves were alive, closing in, suffocating me with their whispers. Then in the distance I heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone crying. It came from the storage area again. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and curiosity pushing me forward. This was it. I had to follow the sound. I stepped cautiously toward the storage area, the whispering doubling in intensity. As I approached, I pushed the door open, the creak echoing through the stillness. What I saw next sent chills down my spine. There, standing beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, was the nurse, her back turned to me. She was crying, but as I watched, her sobs morphed into laughter that felt hollow and unnatural. That's when I realized something was horribly wrong. I opened my mouth to call out to her, but no sound came. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. I knew I had uncovered something much darker than I intended, and deep down, I feared I might not make it out alive. I stood frozen in the doorway, the laughter echoing against the stark walls. It wasn't right. It was too loud, too joyful for the situation. I opened my mouth again, desperate to reach her, but the laughter mixed with her sobs created a web of confusion that trapped my voice. "Excuse me?" I managed to choke out, my own voice sounding soft and weak. The nurse didn't turn. I shifted slightly, trying to gauge what was happening, but all I could see was the back of her white uniform and the tousled hair hanging limply. Just then, the laughter stopped abruptly. I held my breath, expecting her to say something. Instead, a silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. I felt a chill run down my spine as I took a small step forward, wishing I could will my nerves to steady. "Nurse?" I tried again, this time with more urgency. Nothing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Suddenly, the flickering light went out completely. I was engulfed in darkness again, except for the meager glow of my phone. The beam bounced off the walls as I turned to look for another exit. A growing realization hitting me. I was trapped. Panic coursed through me. I needed to find a way out. Then the sound of her crying returned, low and muffled, but the laughter was gone. I felt compelled to move closer. What if she needed help? What if she knew the answers I sought? "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Please, I'm here to help." In response, she slowly turned her head, not to me, but to the wall beside her, as if something behind it had caught her attention. A flicker of fear shot through me. I took another step forward, not quite sure what to expect. That's when I felt it. A cold draft rushed past me, and I could swear I heard whispers again. Urgent, frantic ones. I hesitated, glancing down the corridor I had just come from. The darkness seemed to stretch, pulling me with it. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. "Focus," I whispered. I needed to get answers. I reached for her shoulder. "Nurse, we need to—" At that moment, she turned fully towards me, and I stumbled back in shock. Her expression was vacant, eyes wide, mouth forming the words without sound. It felt like time stopped. It was then that I saw it. A jagged mark scraped across her neck, like something had clawed at her. My heart dropped. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Something in the air buzzed, charged with a sense of impending doom. I grabbed my phone tighter, catching sight of a door behind her. An exit. I need to get out, I thought. Just then my phone flickered, and for a heartbeat I saw someone standing behind the nurse, their face obscured in shadows. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I blinked and they were gone. Another wave of cold rushed through me. I turned and bolted for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of something sinister lurking just out of sight. As I fled down the hallway, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me in a cacophony of fear. I needed to know what was happening, but part of me was terrified to find out. As I reached the exit, a final thought struck me. I had to return. I had to uncover the truth about this place, no matter what it cost me. I stumbled into the next room, nearly colliding with a stack of medical equipment. The metallic clang shattered the thick silence, making me wince as I paused to catch my breath. My pulse raced, echoing in my ears as I struggled to compose myself. I had just encountered something beyond my understanding, and now I had to make sense of it. I flicked my phone's flashlight on, illuminating the space around me. It looked like an old storage room, cluttered with dusty boxes and forgotten supplies. The air felt heavy, filled with a lingering odor of antiseptic mixed with something more rotten. I stepped cautiously, keeping my eyes peeled for anything unusual. Suddenly my phone buzzed in my hand. I jumped, nearly dropping it. I wasn't expecting a message, not here. I hesitated before checking, my throat tightening. I opened the screen to find a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be here." My heart sank. I spun around, searching the room, expecting to see someone watching me. Nothing, just shadows and the echoes of my own breath. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Someone knew I was here. But who? I needed to stay strong. I had a job to do, a mystery to unravel. I turned my focus back to the room. One corner caught my eye, an old bulletin board covered in yellowed clippings. I approached, my instincts taking over as I scanned the headlines. Most were about hospital expansions and patient stories, but one article stood out. Strange occurrences in the old wing. Patients report unexplainable sounds and shadows. The article detailed incidents from years ago, patients claiming to see figures in their rooms, and whispers that echoed in the dead of night. My skin crawled at the similarities to what I'd just experienced with the nurse. I took a photo of the article with my phone, determined to dig deeper. As I stepped back, suddenly the overhead light flickered back to life, illuminating the chaotic mess. I squinted against the brightness, blinking away the sudden glare. That's when I saw it. A figure at the far end of the room, standing motionless. Just a glimpse, but it was enough to send a jolt of fear through me. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I took a step back, my hand gripping the doorframe. My mind raced through possibilities. Was this a trick of the light? Or was I finally losing my grip on reality? But before I could decide, the figure took a single step forward, and I saw a flash of familiar, haunted eyes. "Help me," it whispered, barely audible. I felt a chill wash over me. I didn't recognize the face, but I was certain I'd seen it somewhere, maybe in the old photos lining the hospital walls. I had to know more. I took another tentative step forward, but instead of approaching, I turned to run. The whispers erupted again, louder than before, swirling around me like an angry swarm. Panic surged as I raced toward the exit. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I was looking for was slipping away, and I might be running out of time. That's when I heard a crash behind me. I flinched and glanced back, my heart racing. I had to get out, but I also had to come back. Something was desperately trying to pull me deeper into this nightmare, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I bolted through the doorway, heedless of the echoes of my footsteps against the barren floor. I had just survived an encounter that felt like a twisted nightmare, and I needed to escape the suffocating presence behind me. My heart pounded as I sprinted through the dimly lit corridor that led back to the main hall. I reached the intersection of the hall, hesitating only briefly before I veered right. I could almost feel the ominous weight of unseen eyes on my back, and it urged me to move faster. Just as I stepped into the adjacent hallway, a loud bang echoed from the storage room I had just fled. The sound reverberated through the wall, and I felt a rush of cold dread. What had I left behind? Breathless, I rounded the corner and nearly stumbled over an overturned chair. I caught myself and took a moment to collect my thoughts, scanning the other rooms I could see. Most were locked, their windows boarded shut. I briefly considered finding a way out, but I couldn't shake the need to understand what I had just witnessed. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, my heart sinking at the unknown number glaring at me. This time, the message read, "Don't trust what you see." Confusion gnawed at me. Who was sending these? Were they connected to the figure I had encountered? I pressed onward, my steps taking me to a set of double doors marked staff only. They swung open easily, and I hesitated before stepping inside. The room beyond was dim, but I could make out hospital beds lined up against the far wall, motionless and shrouded in dust. My breath caught in my throat. The atmosphere felt thick, as if the air held on to memories of pain and suffering. As I stepped inside, the whispering returned, faint but undeniable. "Help me." It curled around me, mixing with the faint sounds of distant machinery. I turned frantically, searching for the source. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a small object glimmering on the floor. I approached it, and my heart sank as I recognized it, an old badge identifying a nurse. Her name was stitched in faded lettering, Elena Ramirez. I had seen her name in one of the clippings on the bulletin board. This was no coincidence. My fingers trembled as I picked up the badge. The instant I held it, a sudden chill ran through my spine. The whispers intensified, forming a chorus of cries. I could barely think above the noise. "Help," they begged in unison. Before I could process anything further, the lights began to flicker erratically. Panic surged anew as I dropped the badge and stumbled backward, finding myself against the wall. I needed to leave before whatever this was closed in on me. But just as I turned to escape, the door slammed shut, and I felt the weight of something dark and oppressive fill the room. I banged on the door, desperate to get out, but the whispers became a wall of sound, drowning out my panic. Then I heard it, a voice cutting through the chaos. "Help us," it called. I froze, heart racing. There were others here. I realized then I wasn't alone. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my breath shallow and quick. The whispers surrounded me, a cacophony of pain and despair, each voice blending into the next. "Help us," they pleaded, and I felt tears welling in my eyes. I couldn't process what was happening. I just needed to get out. I banged on the door again, my fists pounding against the heavy wood. "Let me out, please," my voice echoed back at me, and the whispering grew louder, almost mocking. Then, all at once, the voices ceased. A heavy silence enveloped the room, suffocating and oppressive. I strained to listen, expecting the whispering to return, but there was nothing. I felt a sudden flare of panic. That's when I saw it. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the room. It was indistinct, half-formed in the dim light. I squinted, trying to make sense of the shape. My pulse quickened. It was humanoid, but it felt wrong, twisted somehow, like a reflection warped by fear. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its gaze boring into me. "Get away from me," I shouted, feeling the weight of dread settle deeper in my chest. The figure straightened slightly and the air shifted. A flicker of recognition sparked within me. It was wearing a faded hospital gown, much like the ones from the beds surrounding me. I stepped back, my heart racing. What was this place? Why did I come here? "Help!" The voice was a whisper, but it was clear and seemed to come from everywhere at once. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I turned it, praying it would open, but it was locked tight. My eyes darted around the room, searching for another way out. A faint glimmer caught my attention, a small window high on the wall. I jumped, reaching for it, but my fingertips only grazed the cool glass. I let out a frustrated scream, but the sound felt hollow in the stillness that enveloped me. Then I heard the noise again, the deep resonant thud of footsteps approaching. My heart dropped. Whoever that figure was, it wasn't the only thing in this room. I strained to listen, the footsteps growing louder, matching my own rising panic. "Please, help!" The voices came again, more urgent, more pleading. I stumbled back from the door, my mind racing. I had to escape. I couldn't let that figure get closer. In a flash, a thought struck me. The badge. I needed to find out more about Elena Ramirez. Maybe it held answers. I crouched down, frantically searching under the bed nearest to me. The dust coated my fingers as I moved, but I felt something hard beneath the grime, a small metal box, intricately engraved. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling. The footsteps continued to draw closer, the tension in the air thickening. What was inside? I had to know, but I needed to act fast. With my heart hammering, I opened the box, ready to confront whatever fate awaited me. The lid creaked, revealing a collection of old photographs, but as I fumbled through them, I recognized faces I never wanted to see again. And at that moment, the room plunged into darkness. I froze as the darkness engulfed me. My heart thundered in my chest and my hands trembled around the box. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the presence of the figure lurking nearby, a shadow in the blackness. Panic clawed at my throat. I had to get out. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. The photos were fanned out in front of me, but I couldn't see them now. I pushed the box aside and pressed my palms against the cold floor, searching for the edge of the bed. My fingers brushed against the familiar hard wood. I steadied myself, breathing deeply. I couldn't let fear take over. Then, just as suddenly as it had gone dark, a flickering light appeared from somewhere beyond the room. I squinted, desperate for any source of visibility. The dim glow revealed the figure, its outline sharper now against the pale light. I took a step back, my feet catching on the box, the photos tumbling to the ground. "Please," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Just leave me alone." The figure's head tilted, though I still couldn't see its features. It took a slow step toward me. I had to find a way out. I felt around for the door, my heart racing with each sound of the footsteps drawing ever nearer. "Help!" The whisper pierced the air again, unmistakably pleading. I paused, my breath hitching. Was it begging for help, or was it drawing me in deeper? Desperation clawed at me, urging me to act. Suddenly I remembered the photographs. I lunged for the box again, scrambling to find them in the dark. I grabbed one, feeling the smooth paper beneath my fingertips. I fumbled for any trace of light while desperately trying to remember what I had seen before everything went dark. Finally, the glow intensified, revealing a face from one of the photos. A woman, a distant and unsettling memory. I felt bile rise in my throat. Elena Ramirez. I had seen her before on news reports. She had gone missing, and they'd found her here, in this very hospital. But that wasn't all. I recognized others in the photos, faces that brought a rush of memories I tried to bury. Each one was attached to a story, a piece of darkness I wished to forget. I would never have come here if I had known. The figure loomed closer, and I caught the faintest glimmer of a smile, though it felt predatory. My breath quickened, and panic surged once more. I pushed myself to my feet and rushed toward the door, slamming my shoulder against it in a desperate attempt to escape. It held firm. The laughter of the whispers enveloped me again, now mingled with a new voice that echoed from the depths of the room, low and taunting. "You're not leaving." I backed away from the door, eyes darting about for any option. That's when I noticed a crack in the wall, uneven and jagged. I couldn't tell where it led, but there was an escape, small and hidden. But before I could move, the figure took another step forward, and the lights flickered again, plunging me into darkness one more time. Inside the frigid darkness, I stumbled back, my heart racing even faster. The whispers had grown louder, almost deafening, like they were closing in on me from all sides. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. The flickering light had vanished, leaving me completely enveloped in shadows. The pressure in my chest felt like a vice, and every instinct screamed at me to escape, but the presence in the room was suffocating. I forced myself to think. The crack in the wall. Could I fit through it? If I could just find it again. I scoured the area with my hands, brushing against the cold surface until I found the rough edges of the crack. Not thinking twice, I began to squeeze my body toward it, but something suddenly brushed against my arm. My muscles went rigid. "Help." The voice was closer now, almost right beside me. It was a raspy breath. I froze, my stomach churning as my mind raced. Was it the same voice that had whispered before? In a moment I could be completely consumed by the shadows or pulled into whatever ethereal force loomed nearby. I clenched my eyes shut, praying that when I opened them, this nightmare would end. After what felt like an eternity, I gathered enough courage to peek through my lashes. I could just make out the shape of the figure, standing still but impossibly closer than before. My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. With renewed determination, I forced myself backward towards the crack, feeling the cool wood against my back. The figure continued to inch forward, its movements deliberate, almost like it was enjoying my struggle. Instinctively, I gripped the edge of the crack, pulling myself through, and gasped as I felt the sharp edges dig into my skin. I squeezed through and tumbled into a narrow space, my body scraping against the walls. Light erupted from the other side, flooding my senses. I scrambled forward, desperate to escape the terror behind me. Then I burst into a small, dimly lit utility closet. I stood still for a moment, catching my breath and trying to quiet my racing heart. I could barely see, but I noticed old medical supplies stacked along one wall. There was no way out of this room. I had to think quickly. The whispers began to fade, replaced by the echo of my own heartbeat. That's when I noticed a glint on the floor. I knelt down, squinting in the low light. A key? I lifted it carefully, its metal warm from contact with the tiles. It felt heavy in my palm, an unexpected gift amid terror. I felt a rush of hope. Maybe I could unlock the door down the hall, the one that led to the main stairwell. But as I stood up, I was struck by a chilling realization. If the figure had been watching me, it might know where I was now. It might even be waiting for me. With the key held tightly in my fist, I slowly opened the closet door, listening for any signs of movement in the corridor. The silence was unnerving, but I had to get moving. I stepped out cautiously, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt without the safety of my hiding spot. But then, from the shadows at the end of the hallway, I heard the voice again, clearer than before. "You can't escape." My blood ran cold. I wasn't alone. With my heart racing, I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of dread settle over me once again. I had to keep moving. Adrenaline surged through my body as I stepped into the narrow hallway, pressing forward while keeping my eyes peeled for any sign of the figure watching from the darkness. I resisted the urge to look back, hoping that whatever was lurking wouldn't decide to strike. As I bypassed the nurse's station, I clutched the key tightly, the metal almost digging into my palm. I needed it to unlock the door I had seen earlier, the one leading to the main stairwell. If I could make it there, perhaps I could finally escape this nightmare. The stillness hung in the air like a heavy fog, and I strained my ears, still hearing the whispers echoing in the background. They sounded frantic, full of warn and regret, but I couldn't decipher them. My feet carried me quickly to the door at the end of the hallway, the heavy silence pressing against me, intensifying the fear gnawing away at my resolve. I reached the door, heart pounding mercilessly against my ribcage. I fumbled with the key, my hands trembling as I inserted it into the lock. As I twisted it, the door creaked heavily, and anxiety shot through me as I pushed it open, stepping into a darkened stairwell. The air was heavy with a musty smell, and my flashlight illuminated the way as the door swung shut behind me with a solid thud. A final note in a muted symphony of fear. I paused, listening intently. Had the whispers followed me? The silence was palpable, but I had the nagging feeling that something was still close behind, ready to pounce as soon as I let my guard down. I hurried down the stairwell, glancing over my shoulder once. Nothing moved, but I couldn't shake the paranoia. With each step, the memories of the patients invoked in my mind the names I had seen on those haunting discharge papers. Had I unlocked something more sinister by coming here? Were they calling out for help from beyond? Reaching the bottom, I pushed open a heavy metal door leading to the ground floor. A dim emergency light flickered, and I could see the entrance up ahead. Freedom seemed so close. But as I stepped further into the lobby, my heart sank. The room was bathed in an inexplicable shadow, even with the flickering lights. The once quiet atmosphere was filled with murmurs. They twisted through the air, desperate and chaotic. I pressed forward, desperately seeking the exit, when suddenly the whispers stopped. Fear gripped me. The silence was deafening. I felt a surge of dread, and instinctively I turned to look behind me, expecting to see the shadowed figure looming just out of sight. But instead, I saw nothing. The lobby remained still, a forgotten space marred by an undercurrent of anguish. Just as I took a step toward the exit, the shadows shifted. A figure emerged directly in front of me, solidifying the air around. My heart dropped back into my stomach. The implication of its presence sent shivers racing down my spine. Elena Ramirez? The figure was indistinct, hazy like fog. But I could feel its energy, a mix of anger and desperation. It reached towards me, mouth-forming words, but all I could hear was a muted cry. "Help us!" I gasped, breaking into a run. I didn't know what to believe anymore, if I was seeing ghosts or just losing my mind in the dark atmosphere of the old hospital. But I could no longer handle the weight of the unanswered questions. I just wanted to survive. As I burst outside into the cold night, I drew in a shuddering breath. The fresh air felt sharp against my lungs, a reminder I was alive. I turned for a moment, gaze fixed back on the looming structure behind me. That place would always be a part of me, a pocket of dread and mystery. Even as the whispers faded into the night, I knew it wouldn't be the last time I thought of them. What happened? I wondered. Would anyone ever hear their pleas? I didn't know if the answers lay within the hospital walls or beyond them. But one thing was certain. Whatever darkness lingered there refused to be forgotten. And as I walked away, I could almost hear them breathing just behind me, in the shadows, pleading for release. I guess I would have to come back one day if only to know the truth. But for now I chose survival, leaving behind questions that could haunt me long after the night is over.